1:15. It's time. All right. Hi, everyone. How are you? You're awake now. That's good. So my name's Julieanne Kost. I work for Adobe Systems. I've worked there since 1992. I used to work in tech support. If you ever called Adobe and got the right answer, that was me. Then I went on to user education, worked on the manuals, classroom and a book. I don't know if any of you guys remember Mr. Vegetable Head. Oh, yeah, that was me. All right, since then, I'm now responsible for talking about Photoshop and Lightroom and everything in that ecosystem, and I get to travel around the world, and it's quite lovely, and I get to talk to people like you. I have to tell you, I'm super nervous. Adobe Max is always the show that makes me the most nervous all year. I think I stand up here and I'm like, well, I know Photoshop, but then I talk to you guys after hours at the bash, hopefully tonight and stuff, and I'm just always amazed by what you do. So all I want to do is talk about Photoshop, and hopefully you guys can learn something. I do speak quickly, but everything is on my blog, blogs.adobe.com/jkost, J-K-O-S-T. It's all searchable, so if there's something that I mentioned today and you have more questions about it or you want to know more about it, please feel free to check that out. It, of course, is free. All right, so let's get out of here. Those are my social media properties if you are interested. All right, now let's go to all about you. So we're going to start in Photoshop, obviously. I want to start, the first thing in the description talked about kind of setting up your workspace. So there's a few things that I just want to mention. One of them being, if you installed the update, you'll notice there's this new home screen, right? Well, we've had the start screen before, but it would always pop up. And since you're advanced, I imagine that not all of you liked it. And so there was a preference before to turn it off. But I'm actually finding that it is quite useful because I can now just toggle by clicking on the PS icon to get to Photoshop. And I can have documents open here, and I can still toggle back to the home screen at any point in time. So maybe you're thinking, well, I never need to go get my recent files or whatever, but there's other stuff you can do here. You can go to Learn. You can also go to your LR photos, if I was connected to the internet, but I forgot to do that. First mistake, there will be more. If I make a mistake and you offer a friendly suggestion as to what I am doing wrong, you might win a prize. If you're mean, you have to give me a prize. Okay. I'm also going to switch my glasses because I can't actually see you guys and the computer at the same time. So we'll just switch that. All right, so if you don't want this, you can always go to the start screen right here. All right, and you can go, and we'll talk about a number of different preferences. But I want to talk about a few right here that I think since you're advanced, you might want to turn off. So I'm going to go here to Interface, and actually you're not going to turn this one off, but you might want to change this, the highlight color, from blue, or from the default to blue. That just means if you're in your channels or your layers panel, it's just a little bit easier for you to see what is selected there. The other thing that I've done is I've changed my UI font size to large, and I've also scaled the UI to fit. Now, once you change this, you won't see a difference until you actually quit and then relaunch. But for those of you like me who have a large monitor, I sit a little bit further back from it, and it just makes it a little bit easier for me to see. So you might want to give that a try. Here under Workspace, I've also enabled the large tabs. It just makes it a little bit easier for me if I do need to pull on a tab and rearrange my panels or something. It's a little bit easier for me to grab it. Under the tools, so you'll notice sometimes we have those rich tooltips, but again, I'm assuming because you're advanced, you might not want to see them. They're the ones that pop open, they have a little animation in them, and they play a few times. So you can always just turn off those rich tooltips right here. And in fact, you can toggle off both of the tooltips if you don't want to see any of them. And then I'm going to move down to this Guides, Grids, and Slices. And under the Path area here, for path options, it's defaulting now to blue, which is fine. It's easier to see the path, but I actually prefer, because I do use the pen tool all the time, to just switch this to light gray. It's just easier for me. You can also change the thickness of the path right here, so if you want it thicker, you can see it. And we've changed something else in the most recent version, and that is we've changed the default colors for like some of the filters and some of the tools. Like you'll notice there's a different icon when you drag out a gradient or when you go into the blur filters. So if you just want that to be black and white and not that default blue, you can just change that right here. Okay. The other thing that people always ask me about is editing the toolbar. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that start space. But when you want to edit the toolbar, It's usually for one of two things. Either you want to assign a different keyboard shortcut to a tool, or you just might not want to see all of the tools. So let's do both. So down here at the bottom, there's this 3-dot icon, right? That's the More icon. And if you click on that and hold, you can go in and you can edit your toolbar. So this might be really handy if there's some tools, for example, that you don't ever use. So say, for example, you don't use the single row marquee or the single column marquee tool. And maybe you want to see both the rectangular marquee tool and the elliptical marquee tool both at once. So if I pull them apart, now they have their own spot on the toolbar. So that might be helpful. You can also change the keyboard shortcut for any of the tools. Do you guys know all the keyboard shortcuts for all the tools? Do you know the Photoshop alphabet? The A is for direct select, B is for the brush tool, C will give you cropping, and D is for the default colors, E is for the eraser tool, F will go to full screen mode, G is for the gradient, and H is for the hand tool, I is for the eyedropper, and J is for the healing brush, K is for the new frame tool. Well, if you're not going to sing along, never mind. Okay. All right, but you can go in here, but the thing is, like, I could change a keyboard shortcut, right? So you could change this to whatever you want. Most of them are taken. There is one that is not taken. That is the N key. It stands for nothing. So you'll remember it, and you can assign that without having to swipe it from another tool. But one thing you might want to do is you might want to also enable this option here to disable shortcuts for hidden toolbar extras, so that if you do pull some tools over here, like maybe you come to the slice tool and you pull that over, or the slice select tool, they still have the C as the keyboard shortcut. So if you're doing that Shift-C to cycle through, now it's going to ignore the ones that you pull out of the toolbar. So I have people who only put the tools that they don't know the keyboard shortcuts for, and then I have people who only put the tools that they know the shortcuts for. It's whatever you find most easy for your workflow. And of course, you can always go to the To column. So if you like all your tools showing, you can go ahead and do that as well. So I mentioned that some of the tools are not, do not have that keyboard shortcut. So you might also want to go to the Edit menu instead and come down here to the keyboard shortcuts. So in fact, before we do that, let me just open up some files here. So we're in Lightroom. I'm going to grab these two images, and I'm just going to open them both. So I use Command E. That's just edit in. It will just edit those. In Photoshop is just pixel-based layers. So I've got two documents open, right? And it's very easy to use Control-Tab to switch back and forth between the two tabs, or it really cycles through, so you could have 10 or 15 or however many files open as you need. But the thing that I like to do, because I'm always compositing, is I typically want to go back and forth between Window, Arrange, Consolidate to Tabs, and Tile Everything. And I don't like to come down here and try to find that menu item, right? Because I'm always going like, okay, Window, Arrange, and then right, to get there. So anything that you use more than like twice a day, I would just assign a custom keyboard shortcut. And you can see I've assigned them here. So how did I do that? Well, that's just under Edit, and then Keyboard Shortcuts. And then here, you just scroll down and you go to Window, Arrange, and you just scroll down until you see what you want to assign the keyboard shortcut to. You just select that and then type in the keyboard shortcut that you want to use. And usually it'll give you a little warning and say, I'm sorry, that's already in use. And you say, yes, but I am the master of my Photoshop, and I want it to be this, and you change it. All right? So other keyboard shortcuts that I find super easy or super helpful to assign, maybe under Layer. So for example, down here, if you want to assign keyboard shortcuts to add layer masks, you can do that. I add one to enable and disable my layer mask, so to hide it, you can add a keyboard shortcut for that. I also add one for adding, like if I've drawn a path and I want to convert it to a mask, I can go ahead and add a vector mask with using the current path using this keyboard shortcut. So it's really up to you. But I do want to point out two new things. Well, one's new and one's not. The task space is new. So we have a lot of task space. That's like when you go into selected mask or you go into content aware fill, you can now customize all those keyboard shortcuts in there. So if they don't make sense to you, you can assign your own right here. And under the tools area here, you're thinking, well, wait, we were just assigning keyboard shortcuts under the toolbar editor, but under here, you'll notice if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a lot of other stuff here that you can assign keyboard shortcuts to. So you'll notice here are all the ones like to increase or decrease the brush size if you want to change those, or you could even bring up the foreground color picker. So just take a look through these, I don't know, Friday afternoon when it's 4:45 or something, and you have a little bit of time, and just see if there's not something here that would be much easier if you just assigned a keyboard shortcut to it. Okay, so now, for example, if I want to go back and forth, I can just do Command-Shift-T will tile all of my images. Command-Shift-R goes ahead and goes back to a single image view. If I tap the N key, it brings up the color picker for me. So just some things that you might find useful. Okay, custom workspaces. So I don't know about you guys, but so I'm lazy. Are there any other lazy people out there? Just out of curiosity. Okay, so you lazy people, actually you people who raise your hands, you're not lazy enough. It's actually the people who were too lazy to raise their hands. Those are the people that I'm talking to. All right, no, I know we're not lazy, we just want to be efficient, right? So why do we have to go pick a tool and then go and pick a layer and then go, wrong tool. Wah, 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 and then go get your tool, and then you get your option, and then you go all the way to your properties, and then, right? Why don't we just put them all together, right? So why don't I say, hey, you know what I use? I use my layers panel. So I'm just gonna dock it with my tools. And yeah, and I use my properties panel. Do you guys remember the game of Pong when you were young? We do not like Pong, right? Yeah, not if you have an older brother who beats you up. Every time you win Pong, every time you lose Pong, doesn't matter, just an excuse to beat up your younger sister. But for a while, he was 2 years older, but I was just as tall as he was. It was short-lived, and everyone thought my mom had twin boys. It was not very fun. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm just dragging, yeah, I know, no, not fun. Like, haha, giggle, laugh, laugh. Still scarred, or obviously I wouldn't be telling you about it. All right. So libraries, I also want that over here. So you can see, like, I can nest them together or I can dock them separately. So if I want to put them together, then you just have to get the cyan rectangle around the whole thing, and then just set these up the way you want them. You can even double click, right, to collapse them, because I'm thinking, well, I'm going to use my layers all the time and I'm going to use my properties all the time. And since I have that keyboard shortcut to bring up the color picker, I can close that. And what's left? Oh, actions. Actions are great. I'm going to put them in layers, history, and actions. Okay, so once you set this up, then you just save it as your default workspace. And look, this is how great this is. You're thinking, oh, the layers panel is not at the bottom. I know, I run with scissors sometimes. It's crazy. But I put it there because look what happens. If I want to add like a levels adjustment layer, look where my cursor is. It's like right there. Nothing flew out from the right-hand side. I didn't have to go chase down the panel or anything. All right, and if you have two monitors, of course, you can put it on the second monitor as well. But this is just the way I like to lay it out. So I would use the little icon in the upper right, and I would just save this as a new workspace. And you can see I've already got one, like my panel's on the right, my panel's on the left, because sometimes when I teach, especially beginning, I don't like to move all my panels over there because it gets a little too confusing. But I'll leave them there for now. All right, one last thing as far as customizing panels go, I'm going to draw two little shapes here. So what have we got? I've got a shape. I'm going to draw a little rectangle there, and then let's just switch here. And I'm going to drag a little ellipse. And someday I'm going to remember to bring something other than a tablecloth, like maybe a mouse pad. But if you want a challenge, when you get back to your office, definitely put down a tablecloth and put your mouse on top of it and try to work with it. All right, so I've got these, an ellipse and a rectangle, right? No big deal. But on my layers panel, when I come down to the panel options, there's a few things that I might change. Now, I might want to see, depending on my monitor resolution and everything, I might want to see each one of my little layer thumbnails larger. So great, I can choose between all these different options. I don't have a lot of screen real estate today, so I might leave it a little bit small. But the other thing you can do, if you're working with a big document but lots of little elements, instead of seeing the thumbnails in relationship to the entire document, so see, we see this little teeny circle here, and I can't even tell if it's a circle or a square, and I see this little teeny rectangle right here. But if I change this to layer bounds, and then I click OK, now my ellipse is larger and my rectangle is larger. So I don't see it in the relationship, and since they're both black, it might actually be a little difficult to see. So let's go do two things. I'm going to go to panel options. I'm just going to make them bigger so you can see them. Also, I'll just point out while I'm in here, use default masks on fill layers. So yes, I like that. Expand new effects. So when you add layer styles, do you want it to expand so you see all those styles? Or are you confident you're just like clicking it and you don't want it to update? And do you want to add a copy to copied layers? So I always toggle this off. I know it's a copy. You know how I know? There's another one just like it. I know it's a copy, so I leave that off. All right, so now maybe we can see this a little bit bigger. Doesn't seem to be a circle. Let's just look at this for a minute. Why are you not a circle? well, I seem to have something being an issue at the moment. I'm sure it's me. It's not you, Photoshop. It's me. I know it's me. I love to blame you, but it's typically me. So maybe it's because I'm hooked up to another projector. I'm not sure. But it should be showing it as an ellipse. All right, let's go ahead and, because it showed it as an ellipse like an hour ago in my hotel. So I'll go ahead and just change that back. Where am I? I'm under panel options, and then I'll just go back to entire document and click OK. All right, so do we need those layers? No, we don't. So we just select them and we tap delete. All right, so page 1, we are done. 5 more pages to go. It's 1:30, 15 minutes in. We are right on time. So let's close that, and let's close that. And I'm going to go back to Lightroom, and we're going to come here to Layers, Masking, Compositing. This is also going to include some smart objects. This is going to include advanced blend if sliders. What else? Well, let's start with these 3 images. So I have 3 images here. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to say Edit In, and I'm going to open them as layers in Photoshop. So that's going to open, and you can do this from Bridge as well. I think from Bridge it's under the Tools, Photoshop, and then Open as Layers, right? So this way I don't have to open them all and then drag them and drop them into one single document. It's going to do it for me. Again, I say thank you, Photoshop. I appreciate you doing the work for me. All right? If Photoshop is not behaving the way that you expect it to, you are not being sincere. No, if it's not, look 3 places. Make sure you have the right tool, right? Because sometimes, you know, you might have just, instead of the lasso, you've got the polygonal lasso tool or something. It's silly, but sometimes we just don't see the right tool. Make sure the options are set in the options bar. And if you don't know what the default options are, just right-click and reset the tool. Like if the tool isn't painting right, and you're like, I don't know why it's not painting right. You know, maybe the smoothness is different, or the blend mode, or the opacity. Just reset the tool, and it'll reset it to the default settings. And then the other place, of course, is your layers panel, right? Because you're probably on the wrong layer, or you've got the layer mask selected instead of the layer. So those are the 3 places to look. And if you ever have your brush tool, and for example, you have a big brush here, and then all of a sudden you go to lunch, and then you come back, and then your brush looks like this, right? Okay, then what happened is probably over lunch, you sent an email in all caps. And so you shouldn't be yelling. But that's another story. So with the cap locks key on, this is a feature. It changes your brush into the precise cursors, which are the crosshairs. So someone at one point in time was on the phone for over an hour in technical support to ask me that question. So you're welcome. All right, turn off cap locks, you get your brush back. All right, so what do I have here? All I have are 3 frames that I photographed out the hotel window. So I set up my camera and I hooked up what's called an intervalometer. It's just a way to set the camera so it takes a picture every like 5 minutes. So you get a time lapse, and then you can put it together as a movie, right? And then you can play it and it compresses time, and it's really cool. But I thought, you know what, I've already got like 700 exposures throughout the day, so why don't I just take 3 of them and make a nice little composite from dark or from day to night. So I've got 3 frames from that long time-lapse exposure, and one of them's at night, right? And one of them's in the morning, and one of them's midday. So it just makes more sense to me to put like the night at the top, and then have midday, and then morning at the bottom. So what I'm gonna do, because one of the things I wanna just tell you is, I love coming to conferences, especially where people have to change up what they do. Like one day you're designing a logo, and then the next day you're working on a photo of a car, and then it's all these different things, because you know that if I show you a tool, you don't have to use that tool on a photo, or you don't have to use that tool on something that's more traditionally graphic design. So for example, when I come in here and I go, okay, well, we're gonna set up a new guide layout. Most photographers will be like, well, what do you mean I don't need a new guide layout? Okay, what if I want to make a nice transition between both of these, and I want the transition to be the same distance, right? Well, wouldn't it be easy if I just went to new guide layout and I said, oh, I want like 3 columns, right? Because I'm gonna have morning, noon, and night, and then I'm gonna set my gutter really wide so that I know exactly where I'm gonna drag my gradient, so that I get the same size transition or same size gradient between the 3 images. So just because I'm using something later like smart objects to add a blur, it doesn't mean that you can't add some other filter and have it work exactly the same. All right, so I'm gonna hit OK. I go up to the second layer, right? We tap the G key, that gives me the gradient tool. I set the D key, that gives me my default colors, and then I look down here and I'm like, okay, so I'm going black to white. we know that black is going to hide and white is going to reveal. I'd better add my layer mask first. So let me go ahead and add my mask, right? So I add my mask is white. I just click and drag to the left, and now I get this nice transition between day to midday, or morning to midday, and then I just go up to I do the same thing on the third layer. I add my layer mask. I have my gradient tool selected. It's going from white to black, so I'm just going to drag from right to left, and now I get this nice little transition from day to night. All right, so that's our little like warm up with layers. I'm sure if you're advanced, you know how to use layers, but let's just start there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go on with another image. This is going to be a composite that we're going to create. I'm going to create it about 10 by 10 inches. That's going to give me a rather large file. Usually when I'm doing my compositing, they're usually 24 by 24 inches, but I just don't want to spend the time doing that here. So we'll do 10 by 10. I've set this up once, and then I clicked on this icon right here, and that saved the preset for me, so I never have to set it up again. In fact, I've used it recently, but it's also under the saved area. So now I can just hit create. There's my 10 by 10, and let's go get some images. Because one of the things oh, and this is the image that we're actually going to create, is this little guy here, all right? Or at least we're going to get through as much of it as we can. So let's go back to grid view. All right, one of the things that I really like is I like to work with smart objects, especially when I'm compositing, because I don't know exactly how large they're going to be. I don't know exactly if I'm going to add a blend mode, in which case I might need to lighten them or darken them later. So I want as much flexibility as possible. And because I'm the one photographing these images, I photograph in RAW to give me even more flexibility and headroom for editing. So I've got these two images in Lightroom, and the reason that I opened my canvas size first is because this makes it very easy for me just to drag and drop from Lightroom into Photoshop, and it's going to place those as a smart object. Now, it knows that they're RAW files, so it brings up Camera Raw, but I'll just tap Return, and it will place it. I'll do the next one, and it will place it. Now, if you guys are used to placing images, maybe from Bridge or from the operating system, you know that usually another dialog box comes up, and what Photoshop does is it's transforming it for you to fit the maximum width or height of your open document. And then it leaves it in that state, like, hey, you want to transform it more? I just don't, because usually I'm adding like 5 or 6 layers, and I just want to do it as quickly as possible. So I enable this little skip transform when placing, so I don't have to keep hitting enter or return in order to apply that transformation. Oh, that's brilliant, Julieanne. I didn't know that. Oh, I'm so glad I made your day. Okay, all right, I need a little interactivity. So but the jokes are just for me, and so if you don't have to laugh, don't feel obligated. Okay, so I have my move tool selected. I need this to be down at the bottom. In fact, I need to transform it, so we use Command T. It's taken me about a week, but I'm finally learning. I do not need to hold down the Shift key. And I can hold the Option key still, so that's great. So that transforms from the center, right? And let's just go maybe, I don't know, maybe about that big, and we can just move that over. And of course, the great thing about this is it's a smart object, so I can transform it as many times as I want. And in fact, when we went to Command T, did you notice? It didn't come in at 100%. It came in at like 60% or something. And so I'm transforming it up. It's up to 76% now, but I can go up to 100%, and I know that I haven't had to interpolate up the file. So I'm still like resampling the image down, which is a little counterintuitive because I'm transforming it up, but the original image is much larger than this, so it's still not going past the maximum size, so I'm good with quality there. Then I've got this layer right here, and we'll just use the move tool and scoot that on up. And I'm just gonna leave it like that. Maybe it makes sense to you the other way, but it doesn't really matter which layer's on top of which right now. So we need to learn some shortcuts. I've got 10 really quick shortcuts just with layers and layer masks. So I'll just select the top layer. And you guys know already, you click on the mask icon, you get the white mask, right? But if you want a black mask because you want to hide everything, then you want a different option for that tool, perhaps an alternative behavior. So you're going to either hold the Option or the Alt key and click on the mask icon, and then you get that black mask, right? And then a lot of people I see, they drag their, if they wanted to delete this, they would drag it down to the, oh, I missed it. Oh, it's there somewhere. I missed it. All right, just right click. There's so much stuff in Photoshop that you can right-click and it's context sensitive and it gives you just what you want. So I would just like, boom, right here, delete that layer mask. I don't get a dialog box up or anything. In fact, when I'm choosing layers, if I don't want to go all the way back to my layer, you just click, and wherever you click, you right-click in the image area, you can then pick whatever layers are underneath where you click. So if I right-click up here, I only get the two options, right? The clouds layer and the background layer. If I right-click down here, then I get all of these different options because I'm clicking over multiple layers. If I click way down here, I only get two. I get the foreground and the background. All right, so that's an easy way to select layers. Okay, but I was going to get my marquee tool, and we'll just make like a marquee here. Okay, so now if I add my mask, right, by clicking on the mask icon, Photoshop is smart enough to say, hey, you have a selection. I'm going to add that mask based on the selection. Great, I'll undo that. If I want the opposite, if I say, yeah, I selected the center, but I actually want to mask the opposite, the invert, then I'll hold down the Option key, and then click on the mask. And of course, don't forget, you can always invert the mask, right? So if you add the wrong one, you could also just do Command-I. That would invert the mask. Or at the bottom of the Properties panel, there's also an invert button right there. So you can just invert the mask like that. And you probably know that you can now drag a layer mask from one layer to another, right? So I could just drag that down if I wanted to move it. If you wanted to make a duplicate of it, just like every other thing in Photoshop where you want to duplicate it, you just hold down the Option or the Alt key, and you just drag that up, and that would make a duplicate of the mask. But the one that always confused me was I want to make, like maybe you've selected the foreground and you want to duplicate the mask and invert it at the same time. And it was like sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't, and I couldn't figure out why. You have to hold down the keyboard shortcut before you click on the mask. So if I hold down Option to invert it and Shift in order to duplicate, or Option to duplicate it and Shift to invert it, and then I click and drag the mask, it will invert and dupe the mask at the same time. Quite handy. Okay, we know, let's undo that. I don't need that there. Let's go ahead and click on the link icon. And by the way, you can assign a keyboard shortcut for that link icon if you want to toggle it on and off from the layers panel. What that allows you to do is, let's hide that, is it will allow you to select either the layer, right? So now I can move the layer around, or I can click on the mask icon and I can move the mask around. And I can access both of those by just using the keyboard shortcut. So Command 2 will always select the layer, and Command backspace, or backslash, sorry, will always select the mask. Now, if you don't use the Command key or the Control key on Windows, and you just do the backslash, it's just going to give you the red rubylith overlay. You just tap the backslash again if you don't want to see that. And if you want to see the actual mask because you want to work with it, you want to paint on it, then hold down the Option key or the Alt key and click on the mask, and that will show you the mask. And if you've ever wanted to paste anything into a mask, like you have something on the clipboard, like a texture, and you want to paste it in to kind of grunge up your vector art, the only way to paste into a mask is if you see the mask like this. Like you have to have the mask visible. And if you looked on your channels panel, it would be targeted and visible. And now I could paste, because otherwise, even if I have the mask selected, but I'm viewing the image, it would paste as a new layer. So just Option click, view the mask, hit paste, and it would paste into there. Okay, and then the last shortcut, because there was one more, think about it. Oh, to just temporarily turn off the mask, hold down the Shift key and just click. It gives you the X in there. You don't need the Shift key to bring it back, but it'll just temporarily disable that mask. Okay, so now that we've got all those shortcuts out of the way, let's just right click, and I'm going to delete that layer mask. I'm going to come up here. We're going to add a mask to here. Let's make that layer visible. And again, with the gradient tool, I'm going from black to white here. I've got the mask targeted. I've got black to white. That's kind of weird. I have white to black is what it's showing me here. What's going on? There we go, white to black. Not sure what happened there. So white to black, I want this area to show and slowly fade away. So I'll hold down the Shift key and whoop, right like that, I've done it. Okay, great. I think I want to transform the clouds a little bit bigger. So again, the nice thing about having it be a smart object is you guys know, like I can, don't hold the Shift key down. I can hold, it's going to take me a while. It's only been 20 years I've had that Shift key going. All right, so we can make this really small, and then we can go and do free transform again. I'll hold down the Option key this time. That'll help. All right, and then I can make it large, and we haven't lost any quality, right? That's the whole benefit of the smart object. Okay. We're good there. Oh no, I was going to lower the opacity of that. Okay, so if you want to lower the opacity, you guys know, right now I have the gradient tool selected, so if I tap the number key, like 5, I just switched the opacity of my tool that I have selected, so I don't want that. I'm going to tap 0. I'm going to tap the V key and then tap the 5. when you select the Move tool or any of these tools up here that don't have an option for opacity, then it will change the opacity on the Layers panel. So you can tap 5, you can tap 5 for 55 if you're a quick typer. If you're Michael Ninnis has the best joke, and now I've told you it's a joke, so now it's not going to be a good joke. Anyway, but I stole it from Michael Ninnis. His is if you tap 6, you get 60%. If you tap 6, you get 66%. But if you tap 6, it reformats your hard drive. So be careful. All right. Do not tell them it's a joke before you tell them it's a joke. All right. Anyway, 0 will take you to 100%, but 0 will take you to 0% if you tap it quickly. The other way to get to 0%, or actually it's not 0%, it's hiding the visibility of the layer, is Command comma. That actually hides the visibility of the layer, and that's really nice because you can select like 10 layers. So I've seen people do this. You know, your art director's right behind you, and he's like, well, I want to see what it looks like, you know, with those 4 layers off. And you're like, so you're like, okay, look at it. Okay, close your eyes. And you go there and you're like toggling off the layers. You're like, okay, open your eyes. Oh, what's it look like the other way? Okay, close your eyes. You're like, no. So you can either use layer comps or just select the layers and then use the Command comma to turn them all off and all on at once, to toggle them. Okay, we need to add some other layers to this. So let's go add some more layers. We need the tree. So here's the tree image that I want to use. And I'm going to open it as a smart object, and I'm going to open it in its own layer. And you might be thinking, well, why would you do that? Because I can't tell you the number of times that I've gotten burned because I add a layer as a smart object, and this shouldn't happen, but somehow I seem to make it happen, where I resize it and I transform it and maybe I distort it a little bit and I do all these things, and then I draw the path around it. And then I want to change it later, or I decide not to use the tree in this composite, but I want to use it in a different composite. And then somehow I either lose it or I delete it or something. So when I know that I want to extract something from the background, I will do it in its own layer. Now, when I'm compositing, I don't always know exactly what I want to composite together, so I don't necessarily want to spend a ton of time on it. So in the case like this, I would open it up as a smart object. I would probably just grab like my quick select tool, right? And I would come over here, and it would do a really decent job with the tree down here, and then I could come up here, and then just keep going. Oops, and then I'm a spaz, but it should be doing a, yep, there we go, right over there, and then I'll click up here. And then I have to come in here and kind of go, okay, well, I don't want you, and I go to option, and then I don't want you down here, and then I don't want you over here. And so sometimes, like, if I was just doing this to do a quick composite, like throw it together to see if I even have the right elements, I would definitely do it this way. All right, but this is a hard-edged object. And so for me personally, it's going to be so much easier to just draw a path. I'm going to spend less time using the pen tool drawing a path around here than I am going in and using like quick select with the lasso and then going into select and mask and then refining everything. I just find it's easier. So I'll deselect that. I'll zoom into 100%. Now here's the thing. If I grab the pen tool to make my path, and I'm using the old-fashioned pen tool, right? Just the regular one. I'm not using the Curvature Pen Tool. Although the Curvature Pen Tool is awesome. If you haven't used it, try it. Like, I love it for making shapes. This will totally date me, but I didn't have an iPad when I was a child, believe it or not. I had a piece of string, and we would tie that string together, and we would make a circle, and then we could put that circle down, and we could move the circle to make shapes. That's what the Curvature Pen Tool is awesome for. But when I want a ton of precision, I will go ahead and use the regular old-fashioned pen tool. So I've got the space bar, and I'm just going to scoot this up a bit and come down to the bottom of the tree because I want to start here. But the thing is, I don't know if this is the same for you, but do you guys notice that, like, I can draw a path in one direction much easier than I can draw a path in another direction? So for example, right now, like trying to draw a path up, I don't know why it's so difficult for me. So we have this thing called spring-loaded cursors. And what they do is instead of switching tools, like if I were to tap the R key right now, I would go to rotate view. But if I just hold down the R key, it spring loads that tool. So I hold down R, it gives me the rotate ability, but when I let go of R, I'm back to the pen tool. So it doesn't switch the tools for me so that I only have to hold down the keyboard shortcut, not tap it once and tap it again. So now I could come along here, and for me personally, it's just way easier for me to draw along a horizon or horizontally as opposed to vertically. All right, so I'd just come along here, and then I'd come over here, and then if I needed to, I could just hold down R and keep rotating it and keep doing the path, and R and rotating the path. Now, I can't think of anything more boring than watching me draw a path. So, like any good chef, I would have a file that's already done. See, tree with path. And this is what I do. I put that in there so that I will know that that is a tree with a path. So I'm going to edit the original. It's a TIFF file. I have to say edit the original because I want it to open up the layered file from Lightroom to Photoshop. Otherwise, it's going to flatten it. I don't need the tree with path, right? That's the type layer. I need the path that I already created. So there we go. I've just selected the path. Now I want to add the path as a vector mask. So I can just hold down the Command key and click on the mask icon. And that is the shortcut for adding a vector mask with the currently targeted path selected. So it's just Command on Mac, Control on Windows. So now I have my lovely path. And the great thing about this is I have it in this file. So I can use this today in this file, and then I can use it tomorrow in another composite. And I don't have to redo the path, and I don't have to accidentally, because of course I had probably thrown away the path or something, because I probably didn't save the work path. And anyway. All right, so I want both of these in sight. I'm going to drag and drop, holding down the Shift key. That's going to bring that right in the center. I no longer need this one anymore, so let's close it. I don't need the path targeted, so I will untarget it. And then I'm just going to do a transform here. So Command T to free transform. Now, when you do free transform and the handles are so far out that you can't grab them, use the keyboard shortcut Command 0. It's the shortcut for view fit on screen, right? You probably use it all the time. When you're in free transform, it will fit the transformation handles on the screen. Holding down the Option key, let's make that smaller. I don't know how much smaller because it's on the wrong layer in the layer stack. There we go. Okay, let's transform that again. It's a smart object. I can transform it as many times as I want. There's my little tree. Let's put it behind those rocks. We can just use our little arrows to nudge it down. Let's hold down the Shift key. Let's distort it. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, you ain't the boss of me. All right, hit Return or Enter. Okay, so one of the problems is that the lighting totally doesn't match, right? The other thing that doesn't match right now is, well, I'm going to unify it with two other ways. So two ways to unify your images are obviously with color and then also with texture. Because if we go into 100% and we look at this, for example, you can tell that there's a lot more grain. So probably this image was taken with a higher ISO than this image was. So there's a lot more detail to this image. And the lighting is also very different. So I need to change that. So another advantage of using the smart object when you have a raw file is that when Lightroom or Bridge, or Camera Raw, because actually if you were in Bridge and you opened it in Camera Raw you would hand it off as a smart object. It hands off the entire raw file in this PSD file. So now if I double click on it, it opens it up in raw because it's the actual raw file in there. So now I can come in here and say, hey, you know what? I need to just take the exposure down a little bit. I really want to bring down those highlights. And you know what, let's just boost the clarity up a little bit and give it a little bit of punch, click OK, and it re-renders it from the original raw information. So I'm going to get the best quality that's possible. Now, that did a little bit, but the thing is that when that image, if I shift click here, this image was taken in this huge botanical garden that was covered, and so it's like a giant softbox. So the light is just coming from all angles, and it's very kind of well lit in that there's no directional light. But the problem is in the other image, there is directional light. So I need to make that happen. All right, so how would I make that happen? Well, I've darkened down part of it, so that's great. But the other thing that I want to do is I want to add a curves adjustment layer because I want to darken down the tree, the shadow part of the tree even more. Now, this doesn't have to look exactly realistic because I'm not going for photorealism. I'm going for me, when I make my composites, I just want to make sure that they're real enough that you're not looking at the technical, that you're actually allowed to suspend your disbelief just momentarily to enter into the image, right? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go under curves, there we go. But we know what happens when we add a curves adjustment layer, right? And we start darkening the curve. And I can darken the middle of the curve, but I also want to bring down the highlight. So I'm going to bring down my bright point there, and let's darken it down quite a bit. But the problem is everything's being darkened down, right? Because that's the way that layers work. The layer on the top is affecting everything underneath it. So what I need to do is I need to stop it so that it only affects the tree. And we can do that by either going to Layer and choosing Create Clipping Mask. We can use the keyboard shortcut, or just on the Layers panel, hold down the Option key, click right in between the two layers, and that will clip it. So now my curve is only affecting the tree, right? And now I actually have to go in and paint it. And this is the kind of thing where I was like, that's going to take me a long time. Yeah, it's art. It's your process. I actually don't mind it. It's like the pen tool. People are like, I don't want to learn the pen tool. It takes so long. I'm like, yeah, but it's part of the process. It's lovely. I enjoy it. Anyway, so I'll grab my paintbrush, and you guys know the keyboard shortcut. It's like Option, Control, left and right will allow you to drag a smaller and larger brush, or you can drag up and down if you want to change the hardness of the brush. On Windows, Shift, Alt, drag, or right-click drag. I don't know. It's on my blog. I have to reference my blog quite often, more often than I'd like to admit these days. In fact, do you guys know that I don't find it odd that I have to watch my videos before I come and do a presentation. It's weird when I see myself say something that I've never known. Never have I known it. And I'm like, what? Photoshop does what? I never knew that. All right. So my mask is white, so I know I have to paint with black if I want to hide the curve. So you see what I'm doing, right? I'm just going to come along here, and I'm just going to paint in the highlight. All right, now this would take a minute, and we don't have a minute to spend on this. So I'm just going to do it real quick, just get all the top portions done. Oh, why didn't I bring my Wacom tablet? It is sitting in my hotel room. I am so lame. I am so lame. It was like, oh, it's so heavy. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's not part of the art, it's part of the frustration. Okay, anyway, let's get just a little bit bigger brush there, and I'm just gonna zip down here, shoop, and you don't wanna do this, but I'm just gonna hold down the shift key. All right, that's fine. Yeah, we'll just right on down to the bottom there. You guys will be much better with this when you do it yourself. Okay, so point being is that I didn't have to be super careful because that curve is clipped. Right, like some people would go in and they try to dodge just the tree, but I can dodge the tree, but have let's look at the mask, you'll see what I mean. If I option click on the mask, the black there, half of it's on the tree and half of it's over the tree, but it doesn't matter because the tree is being clipped, because the curves is being clipped by the tree. Okay, then you might need to go in and if you have this area down here that you're like, no, that really needs to be a lot darker. that's it doesn't matter. Okay, that needs to be darker, so I'll do that, and then I'll add an adjustment layer here. Dun, dun, dun. We'll go down to curves one more time, and let's just bring that down a little bit more there. That looks kind of funny, but that's all right. Then, leave it alone, Kost. Okay, we'll clip that as well. All right, so we'll just option click right there. Now, obviously you can see what's been affected and what hasn't. So I can come on the properties panel and just click on the mask, and I can add a large feather here, because most people make a selection and then they guess, like, I don't know, should this be a 5-pixel feather, a 10-pixel feather? I don't know, it depends. It depends on the resolution of the file. It depends on how soft of an edge you want. So if you want to add a non-destructive softening of the edge, use the properties panel to do that. And I would probably come back here as well, and let's go ahead and zoom in to 100%. And maybe even 200%, make sure you can see it. Let's go over somewhere, yeah, like right there. And I've got the tree selected, and again, even if it's a vector mask, I can still soften the edge by clicking on the mask and then using the feather slider right here. All right, so if I go too far, obviously we start getting a halo there, but if I just add just a slight bit of a feather, just so it doesn't look like I cut it out with a pair of scissors. All right, and while we're so zoomed in here, let's go down here because it's gonna look a little funny if we leave the bottom like that. So just because I have a vector mask on something doesn't mean that I can't add a raster mask as well. So I'll click my mask icon, and now I've got a raster mask plus a vector mask. I'll grab my paintbrush again. I'll make sure that I'm painting with black, and I'm just gonna paint this away and be like, oh, well, that wasn't exactly where I meant to put that. So let's grab all 3 of those layers that make up the tree and put them in a group. So I just use Command G to put them in a group. And of course, I know all of you rename your layers. You grab the move tool and we just reposition that, and I'll put it like right about, let's say right about there. All right, that's fine. Now let's go and expand that group so we can see the contents of it. I'll go back to the mask. I'll grab my paintbrush again and make sure that I'm on the raster mask, and then just paint this away because I have to paint it away so I can see where I need to paint it back in. So then I'll use a little bit smaller of a brush, right? Tap the X key because the X key exchanges your foreground and background colors, and then we can just paint this in. And I'm just going to paint with my trackpad. And that is the weirdest looking rock right there. So I'm just going to make my own shape for the rock because that shape is better. Now, the thing is, a lot of times I don't pick the right size brush. I don't pick the right combination of size brush and feather of brush when I actually make this mask. So instead of now going back in there and trying to go and refine, just stay with the same size brush for making the selection, and then go in there and, like with your lasso tool, if you just want to change this area here, just select it and go to levels, because I'm on a mask, right? So now I can just start scooting this over, and as I scoot over the edges, you can see that the edges are getting harder or softer. Do you see how I'm playing with that? Right? So then I can just push that, and you can also do this in select and mask. In select and mask, like if you drew something with a pen tool and it was a hard edge object and you drew it just a little too far out so there was a halo, go into select and turn the mask into a selection, go into select and mask, use the feather amount to get more levels of gray, and then there's an option in there called shift edge, and just use the shift edge to push in to either choke or to spread out that mask. All right, but I'll just use levels here because I'm just going to do it directly on there because I can do that. All right, what else do we need to add here? Let's go back. Let's add these 2 layers here, and we'll drag and drop them on there. I'll zoom out a little bit. Oh, they're going to drag in. I should have been paying attention to my layers panel because they're both going to come in. Let's zoom out here. See where they came in on my layers panel? Like they're part of the clipping group now, and I don't want that. In fact, I don't want them within the group. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to undo that for a minute because I want to show you something. If I have the tree layer group selected and I drag and drop in here right now, it's going to drag and drop them into the group, right? But if I toggle the group so that it's closed, now I can come back to Photoshop. We'll go back to grid view. Or sorry, I'm not in Photoshop, I'm in Lightroom. I've got these 2 selected, and I will just drag them and hold down the shift key. Now, because the layer group, the tree layer group is collapsed, Photoshop's going to say, well, I guess you don't want them in there. I'll add them above it. Very polite of it, I think. All right? Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then Command-T. We'll free transform this, holding down the Option key. I'm going to scoot this up. Now, I know I'm going to want 2 of these layers, so I'm just going to do a quick Command-J, right? That'll duplicate it, and I'll toggle this one off. So I want to add some just kind of steam, ethereal stuff in the sky. So that's pretty easy. I can use the blend modes, which are pretty cool now that they're like these nice little live blend modes. So I'll just go to Screen, tap the V key, go to 50%, and that's fine, except for this big line down here, right? So we need to add our mask, grab our gradient. We're going from white to black, so I'm going to go from black to white because I know black hides and it just makes more sense to me. So I'm going to click and drag up here so we just don't see the bottom. So great. So now I've got kind of this atmosphere that I've added to build a little depth. But this one I want way more pronounced because I want it in the foreground. So I'm not going to switch it to overlay or anything like that. In fact, I could switch it to, well, let's just, all I want to do is I want to get rid of the dark values, right? If I change it to something like overlay or soft light, it takes the lighter values and makes them lighter, and it takes the darker values and makes them darker, but I don't want the dark values. So I'm just going to use the effects icon down here to go to my blending options, and I'm just going to drag over my blend if slider, right? So as I drag it over here, we can see that it eats away at the darker values, because I'm saying this layer, if it's dark, don't show it. But I need to split those triangles, or the triangle right now, because it's a hard edge. So if you hold down the Option key, you can just split this triangle, and now you get this nice soft edge, right? So that's more what I want. I click OK. It gives me this little icon here, so I know that my advanced blending's been applied. I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'm just going to move this down, and you see how much more dramatic it is down here. A little too dramatic, so I might tap the V key and go to 50%. I might also want to blur it a little bit. To me, it's just looking a little harsh. So I don't know where the blur filter is. It's under there somewhere, but I know I want Gaussian blur. So I just use Command F, and I use this all the time instead of going down to a menu and then having to hunt for the menu item. Like if you don't know where the filter is, but you know the name of the filter, just type it in here and say, yes, please, I was looking for the Gaussian blur. And it is. It's Gauss, like house, mouse, Gaussian blur. All right, we'll click OK. And that just blurred it a little bit. And now I don't need to see that top part, so we'll add a mask. Grab my gradient tool. What am I doing? I'm going black to white. We go up to down. All right. I don't really know that I want those in front of the tree, so let's grab both of them and just drag them down below the tree. Oh, no, let's undo that. I like them with the tree. Okay, I have another layer here, right here. I just added as a texture. We'll do Command-T. I will use the Option key and just drag that up. And I'm just going to put it at the top of my layer stack above the steam. And what it's going to do is this little teeny texture, if we go into 100%, you see that little grain there? It's just going to help the images that don't look the same. Like the texture in here, there's hardly any grain in the tree because I shot it at a much lower ISO. And if you go down to the background down here, this is all grainy and stuff. So the only thing I can really do is add more grain in order to unify the overall look and feel. So I'll just add this and we'll change it to overlay, and or maybe soft light even is enough, and maybe like 40%. Oh, I've got the gradient tool selected, so let's tap V and then go 40%, Command 0. Okay, good. All right. Now, the other way to unify, before we add another image, another way to unify is through color. So at the top of my layer at stack, I'm going to add another adjustment layer. And this time I'm going to add a gradient map adjustment layer. And it's going to take my foreground default, or my foreground background default colors there. But I could go and I could add any kind of gradient. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a gradient that goes from a dark value into a light value. And it remaps all the colors in your image. So if I were to go in here, for example, add another color stop, double click on it, and then add maybe just the slightest bit of color. So let's go into maybe like cyan, like kind of an orangey color. Well, I'll make it real obvious. You see what's happening is it's going to add a color. I want to kind of keep it on this same gradation so there's not a big jump here. So I'll just add maybe about that much color and click OK. And what that does is it puts that yellow or cyan or whatever color you want throughout the image in the dark values. Because I noticed that like the dark values were a little yellow in the foreground, but they weren't yellow in the tree. So it's just going to help unify that way. And then I don't need it 100%, so I'll just take it down to like maybe 70, maybe 60%. All right? And I'm going to move that cloud down just a little. Really, Julieanne? Really? Was that important? Yes, it was. The other thing that I'm noticing is there's a little bit of like vignetting up there at the top. So if I double click on the cloud, because it is a smart object and it's a raw file, I can just come in here and I can go to lens correction. Sure enough, the remove lens correction was not enabled, so this was photographed with a wide angle lens. You guys know when you shoot with a wide angle lens, you get the darkening vignette, so I just took that off and it made it a little bit lighter. Okay, then the last thing we'll add before we move on to another image. This is a multi-layer document. We'll do Command E in order to open this up. What? Okay, we're fine. We're good. No, not now. There's people. Okay, so I don't need that. I'll just delete you. Okay, that solved it. So what is this? This is just a light bulb, right? But it is kind of important to notice, like, I included this because look at the direction of light and the quality of light here. So this is going to be much easier to match because the quality and direction of light, right? So we've got that darker shadow. It's not exactly in the same direction as the foreground image, but it's much closer than say the tree was. So I won't have to do as much adjustment. So I just drew a path around it. I added a little shadow and I put a little dark hole underneath it and we added this little glow. So I need to drag and drop all of these at once, but of course I don't want to mess up. So I'll use Command G to put them in a group and we'll call it bulb. Bulb, B-U-L-B, bulb. All right, show both the layers, drag and drop, hold down the Shift key, puts it right in the center. Ooh, that came in quite large. Don't need that anymore, don't save. Oh, where's the bulb? All right, so the bulb's at like the bottom of my layer stack, so we need to drag that up. That makes sense because I was just working with the sky. Drag it up to the top. And you know what I'm going to do first? I'm actually going to convert it to a smart object. Why? Because then if I want to make a change to one of them, I can make a change to all of them at one time. Ooh, that's weird. Okay, never mind. Just ignore that. Just look over here. Okay, I don't know what the preview is. I'm sure, I don't know. It's a miracle it works at all, I think. But anyway, isn't it? I mean, isn't it fascinating? It's amazing. String. Remember? Me, kid, string. All right, I'm amazed. Okay, don't hold the Shift key down. Old dog, new trick, very hard. All right, so I've got one copy of this. Then I do Command J, or you don't even have to do Command J if you know to Option drag, right? Then we come over here, and then I could make it a little smaller. Look, no Shift. Command J, move over here. Do. And then make it a little smaller. Command T, make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller. Okay, that's enough of those. Well, this one isn't quite in the right spot. Leave it alone. Okay, so I might also want to change the opacity, right? So I come up here, I've got the move tool. This one might be at 60%, this one might be at 70%, and this one might be at 80%. So I just tap those keys, and there we have it. Okay, so it's not as good, I have to say, as the original one, because I can never do, oh, look how much better that one is. Oh, and I put more bulbs up here, but that's okay. Oh, but I did want to change the color of those. So we can put them in a group, right? Command G, put them in a group. right? Now, if I want to change the color, all I need to do, and I'm going to hold down the Option key while I do this, is I'm going to add a solid color fill layer. And I held down the Option key while I was doing that because I want to change the mode to color. Not the color label, but just the mode to color. Click OK. Now I can choose a color. And let's choose something opposite of the sky, so kind of a yellow color there. Click OK. It affects everything, but I can just clip that so it only affects, oh, those are too dark. So let's pick a better color. More saturated, yes. And in fact, I could come back here and add curves. So let's add curves. Let's go ahead and brighten it up. The whole thing brightens. So at the bottom of the properties panel, there's a little teeny icon way down there. You see that one? You just click on that too. That'll clip it. So now my curves are only affecting the little light bulbs. Ooh, I could make an animated GIF. Ooh, ooh, ooh. What does it all mean? We'll talk at the bash. All right. So one last thing, because I do this a lot where I'm like, okay, I just want a white outline around the whole thing, right? I just want to add a little bit of canvas size, but of course I've got layers that are just all over the place. So I've got some sky up there that's beyond the canvas size. So I figured out this little trick. I'll just take all of my layers and put them into a group, Command G, all right? So they're all in one group. Then I'm going to add a layer mask, but I'm actually going to hold down the Option key while I add a layer mask. Why? If I add a layer mask and it's white, and I invert it, well, let me just do it the right way. It's too confusing to explain. Option, click the mask. I get a black mask. It hides everything. But if I disable the link between the group and the mask, and I use the Move tool, we can see that if I move this, hey, there's people watching. Okay. So this is where I show you how many times we can undo just using Command Z. It's really easy. It's so awesome. So I add my group, and then, oh, silly me, I didn't select anything. You always have to select what you want to affect in Photoshop, right? So I'm going to do a Select All. Then I'm going to Option Click. That adds a black mask. But if I have the Move tool, you can see that the mask itself, just ignore all the images, the mask itself is only black to the edge of my canvas. And from there, it goes to white. So what does that mean? That means that if I want to add to my canvas size, so I just go to canvas size here, and let's say I want to add like 0.25 inches all the way around, so a ½ an inch, which, by the way, okay, I can actually even do this math. It would be 10.5. But if I couldn't do the math, I would just say, hey, I want to add plus 5 inches. And then I'd come down here and I'd say, yes, I want to add plus 5 inches. So we can now, you can add, subtract, divide, and multiply in any of the text entry areas throughout the application. And right, actually, this isn't a good example because I could have gone to relative. But anyway, you guys get the point. So why did you, oh, dumb, 10 plus 0.5. This is why I'm not a programmer. 10 plus 0.5. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, anyway, so it added it. So do you see that extra canvas? But the mask is just inverted, so I do a Command I. Hello? Command I, that inverts the mask and adds the border, and the border is really a mask because without that mask, I've got all of those other layers. If I hold down the Shift key and disable that, I have all that other layer stuff hanging over the edge. And I didn't want to crop that because I want it to be re-editable so I can move it later, but that's just a quick way to do it. You got to select all. You got to select all your layers, put them in a group, select all, Option, click to add your mask, but it's the invert, increase your canvas size. You don't have to do the math, and then just invert the mask, and that'll do it. Okay. Whew. All right, let's close that. Geez, we got to keep moving. 2:15. All right. More designy stuff, because somebody's going to say, there was not enough design stuff. Okay, let's open this. Now we'll do more designy stuff. So, zooming in. All right, we talked a lot about layer groups, right? But we didn't say enough. So one of the things that layer groups are really good for is the ability to just group your layers together, right? And I'm going to hold down, it's the Command key, and just click on any of the disclosure triangles, and that'll close all the groups at one time. So I just want to see group 1. So group 1 is the bowling ball. It's not the circle. It's just the bowling balls and the pins, right? So we know that we can go ahead and well, let's go ahead and add our effect. So I want to add an effect, right? I want to add just a stroke effect to this. So it adds a stroke to the bowling ball. We'll do it 2 pixels, make sure we can see it. We hit OK. So then I could always copy this, right? So I can go ahead and say, hey, I want to copy that layer style, right? And I'm going to grab these other 2, and then I'm going to paste that layer style. Paste that layer style right there, all right? And we get exactly what we would expect, right? You can also paste a layer style, however, to a group. And you're like, right on, this is going to be awesome. So undo that. Why would it be awesome? Oh, because then you only have to change one layer style if you want to. Like if you had to make a change to it. So I'm going to undo that. It's still copied to the clipboard, I believe. So I'll go to the group, and I'll right-click, and I'll say Paste Layer Style. But guess what? That's weird, right? You get your Move tool, you select the bowling ball, you drag it out. Oh, well, that's good. Oh, what? It's a different reality. I know. Okay, it's a feature. It's the way it's supposed to work. We're giving you two options. So if you need them to be applied, like if you would just have three separate, like if they don't touch, this one's here, this one's here, and that one's here, go ahead and just apply your layer effect to the group. But when they overlap, you have to know that what Photoshop does is it treats all of the layers within the group as if they're flattened before it adds the layer effect. All right, so let's see how else it does this. Let's delete that. Delete, delete, delete. Why can you always see it? Because it's clear. It's not delete, it's clear. Oh, the audience can always see what you're trying to find before you can. Okay, same thing with blend modes. Select all the layers, go up here to blend mode, go to multiply, okay? So this is as expected. The bowling ball is going to blend with the pin below it, and they're both going to blend with the circle below that. So that's totally as designed. That's how they've always worked. So let's go to group 2. Group 2, I'll select the layer group and change it to multiply. That's cool. See what it's doing? It's pretending like all of the layers within the group are flattened and then multiplying it. But wait, there's more. Okay, what if I go to group 3 and I say, all right, well, what I want is I want all of these to multiply together, but I don't want it to pass through the bottom of the layer group. Well, if you've ever clicked on a layer group, you know that there's this weird blend mode called pass-through. It lets things pass through the bottom of the group. So the multiply blend mode from the bowling ball and the pins is passing through, and it's multiplying with the circle below it. But if I change this now to just normal, now the interaction is only going to happen within the group, but it can't pass through the bottom of the group. So cool other reasons to use layer groups. All right, with this fourth group, I'm going to show you another 2 reasons real quick. If you wanted to change the color of all of those, the pins and the ball at one time, right? If I was here and I had the ball selected and I could say, okay, well, I want to add let's add a, hue sat adjustment layer, and we'll just colorize it real quick. So colorize, and not that color. How about that color? Okay, so the problem is that it's affecting everything below it. And you think, all right, well, let's clip it. So you option click, and now it clips it. So, oh, wait, now it's only affecting the bowling ball. I want it to affect the bowling ball and the pins. So we undo that. We can ungroup it. Well, I'm just going to option click. There is a way in Photoshop to turn off. I think it's a preference so that your undo and redos don't undo and redo toggle of the visibility of a layer. Sometimes I turn that off too. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Sorry, that was an aside. I'm going to drag the hue saturation adjustment layer above group 4. Above group 4. There we go. And now if I clip it to the group, now it's going to affect only those things within the group. All right, so that's how you can isolate it. And another reason to use a layer group, I'll select the group. I'll get the marquee tool. We'll just drag out a marquee or a selection over here, and I'll add a layer mask, but I'll hold down the option key and add the mask. So now whatever's in that group is going to be affected, is going to be masked by that mask. Right? So I can move things around independently, like I could move around the bowling ball with the move tool, but everything that's in that group is going to be masked by the group. This is a great way, if you've spent a long time masking something, and someone says, I want you to try something else. I'm always like, I don't want to ruin my mask. So instead of duplicating the layer, I just put the layer in a layer group and add a second mask to the group. All right? Okay, close that. Don't save it. 19, 20, wait, 115, 230. Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, this one's a cool one. Oh, we have to do this one. Okay. All right. because this seems to be like really trendy right now. Everyone's doing this little thing where we add a like space thing. Yeah. Anyway, I got to fly as a passenger in a plane over in Iceland, and so we have this little background of this crazy, like, look at that, like that's a waterfall. Wow, it's so cool. Anyway, we want to draw a shape. So Command 0. So I grab my pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a path right now. That's fine, but I need the path to go in front of and behind some things. So I'm just going to click like right here, and we'll draw out the triangle, and I want it to go down here, and I want it to go over here. So now I have my triangle, and we'll just make that into a shape. Boom, that's a shape. Okay, great. We tap U to get our shape tool. I don't need a fill on this, so we'll get rid of the fill, but I do want a stroke, so let's add a white stroke. That'll be great, but maybe 10 pixels. Okay, so now I have my shape. That's pretty easy. Now all I need to do is I need to add my effects to that shape. So I want to add an inner glow, so I'll select that, inner glow layer style, and if we zoom in a little bit, I can just come over here. And let's change the color. Let's pick a color from the image. Nice little green there. Okay, it looks like my size is quite large. Let's bring that down and maybe, all right, can you guys see that? You guys see the glow, right? You know what a glow looks like. Okay, there it is. All right, now I'm gonna click on that color again because what I wanna do is just hit copy because I wanna copy the hex number because that's just gonna be easier than trying to guess the color when I do an outer glow. So I'll click on outer glow. And by the way, if you ever get in this situation, you know, where you can't see all the rest of your layer styles, just go down to the effects icon down here and just say, hey, 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 show me all the rest of them. They're important to me. All right, so we click on the little icon right here. We just do a paste. Nope, we have to select it, do a paste. Now I've got the same color. We click OK. It's set to screen. Let's get it a little bit heftier by setting that to normal. And maybe not quite 100% opacity. OK, so we've got our outer glow on here. So the problem is this. When we come over here, I want this to go behind it. Oh, the other thing I want, with my shape, I actually want the shape itself to be aligned in the center. Okay, there we go. So now it's in the center of my path. All right, but what will happen is this. I'll grab my lasso tool. Oop, sorry. Grab my lasso tool, tap the L key, and I just want to draw right down there. And then I think the edge of that little mountain comes like right down there. Okay, and I'm going to add a mask, but I'm going to hold down the Option key because I want it to hide that. See this? Ugh. Ugh. All right, hold on. I'm going to fix it in a second. I got to come over here first, and we got to do the same thing over here. So use my trackpad. Ooh, ooh. Oh, all right, come over here. Where's the edge? Oh no, I don't want it there. Wait. I have to look at the mountain. Sorry. Okay, we're going to go one. All right, and fill that with black. All right, to make that hide, deselect. Zoom in a little bit more though so we can see. So here's the secret of this. What it does is it's stopping, but it's still putting the glow around it. But the glow wouldn't be there in front of the mountain, right? It should stop. It should have a hard stop when it goes behind the mountain. So all you have to do is double click the word effects. That'll take you to your blending options. And it's this little box right here, layer mask hides effects. Because right now the layer mask is not hiding the effect. So you toggle that on, we click OK, see, nice, undo, ooh, bad, icky, ooh, nice, much better. All right, Command 0, let's zoom out, and there we've got our little effect. We could probably add that. I bet I have a library. Oh, look, I could have just added, oh, that's a prettier one. That's what happens when Julieanne has time. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to delete this for 1 second, and I'm just going to use the type tool for a second to add like just my initials on this. So totally depends on what you want. When I click, you'll notice that we have this placeholder text. There's a preference. Just go into the text preferences, and you can toggle off that placeholder text if you want to. So I could just type in JK. Oh, that's pretty boring. Let's select that. Let's go to Bickham, B-I-C-K, B-I. Hello? I know you're there. Well, so we can see this instant type preview as I drag. Really? Yeah, but, no, but, yeah, but, no? I know, but I shouldn't need it. I have it installed locally. Photoshop, there's people watching. I only have 6 minutes. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is the best typeface ever. I'm just going to use that. That's great. Okay. is that, oh, that's Myriad Pro. Oh, we're friends. It's OK. All right. So if this was my logo, wow. No, it's not. But it's my signature. It's just going to be my signature, because I probably wouldn't be changing my logo all the time. But anyway, let's say I spent all this time and I found my font and I installed it and everything looks good. What I could do is I could just drag. Now, I could add the character style, right, if I needed to reuse the character style later on. I don't want that. I want to add this as a graphic. So I just drag the type into my library. Right now, I'm going to delete it from the image. Because now what I have, no matter where I am and wherever I sign in, if it's at home, if it's at work, wherever, I will have this access as long as I connect to the internet. Okay? But right now, it's also locally stored, so it's OK. So this will totally work. So I'm going to drag it out, and it's going to become a cloud-based linked smart object. Right? So that's great. If I need to make a change to it, then I could double-click on the graphic, and I could say, hey, let's add my last name. Well, that's a little hard to see. So let's just click away. This is nice. You don't have to know that keyboard shortcut. And then if this ever happens to you, just go to Image and go to Reveal All. Right? And it'll just build out your canvas for you. And then do a little save, and then do a little close. And because this document was open, it's saying, oh, well, you probably want to update that link in this document. If I had saved and closed this document, then it would, next time I opened it up, would say, hey, it's been updated. Do you want to update? But we won't update it for you automatically. OK, let's close that really quickly. I can just talk to that. But let's open up this, just, yeah, Command E. So let's just open this up. So this was something that it took me a little bit of time, and we don't have to go through it, but I just want to show you, well, two things. One, I was just going to show you, if you do have a bunch of objects that you create that are not the same size, in the past it's been very difficult in Photoshop to distribute them. Sometimes you want to distribute them because they're not the same size. You just want to make sure they have equal spacing in between the objects. You know what I'm saying? Yes, so you guys have found this frustrating in the past, I'm sure. So now I just want you to know, with the Move tool selected, if I selected like all these rectangles, which it's not going to make a difference because they're all the same size, but I want to point out under the More menu here, we have the same old distribute options that we used to have that distributes via their centers or left or right, but we can also distribute based on spacing. So it would put equal spacing between each of your objects, which is very cool. All right, but what I wanted to show you here, just really quickly, what I did, I just created, OK, here's my photo layer, right? And it's clipped to the group. And within that group, I have, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rectangles. I actually have one rectangle that I converted to a smart object and then duplicated, right? And then I tried to add like a little inner glow to it, but it wouldn't add it when I added the inner glow to the individual layers. But another great reason to use groups is if you add something like an inner glow to the group, remember, it's treating it as if it's flattened first, and then it's going to add the inner glow, and you get that. Otherwise, if you add the inner glow to each layer, it doesn't show up because the photo on top just stomps on it, and you can't see it anymore. So, and the reason that I say there's only one rectangle and that I've duplicated it is because if you ever have an instance where you're like, I'm not sure if I want those rectangles to be round-edged or not round or how round, I don't really know, make one shape, convert it to a smart object, and then if you need to make a change, you just double-click on the shape, right? That brings up the contents of the smart object. It's still a live shape, so in my Properties panel, maybe I'll unlink it, and we'll just take, it's kind of going to be like a reversed dog ear, right? So all the rest are curved except the corner in the upper left. Now, if I look at both of these at one time, if I save this using Command S, do you see that it saved it and they were all updated because they're all copies of the same internal smart object, which is pretty darn cool. All right, especially if you've got a lot of the same object and someone says, oh, you got to change that, we want a square. And you're like, oh, gosh, that will take me all lunch. Oh, go on without me. And then you're like, ta-ding, Facebook. All right. OK, so let's close that. I'll show you one last thing real quick. If you guys use Lightroom Mobile, OK, this is so cool. If you use Lightroom Mobile, there's a technology preview on iOS that you can do long exposures now, handheld long exposures, and it combines them, and you can do stuff like that, which is really cool, but that's not what I was going to show you. What I was going to show you was this. If you've ever needed to content-aware fill something, okay, and I know it looks like I ruined this image, but I didn't. The image was like that. I mean, I didn't ruin it. Poor little snail. He's going to get like a little, oh, poor me. Okay, so obviously the snail was very stressed at this developmental stage in which they were growing. So I'm going to grab the lasso tool, and I'm just going to grab around this area right here. Now, in the past, there's no way that content-aware fill would be able to fill this, because when you went to edit fill and you went to content-aware, it was like, I can't do that because I don't understand rotation, and I have to keep all of my pixels upright. So now if you use the new content-aware fill workspace, right? See, this is what it would look like before, because it's like, I'm sorry, I got to keep them upright. And you say, no, no, no. Go ahead and rotate them as much as you want. So you can use the full rotation or whichever one you want. You can also scale it. Yeah, so if it's in perspective or something, try the scale. If it's a mirror, like they always use the example of the butterfly, right? So they mirror it, but you notice, of course you wouldn't notice, because who would notice? It's always horizontal when they mirror stuff. So here's the thing. If you have a vertical thing you need to do, rotate the image. Run it, rotate it back. Ha ha. All right? Okay, and it will output this to a new layer. So awesome. There it is, totally non-destructive on its own layer. And if we go back to Lightroom just for one moment, I'll just show you. We can go full screen here. So that was like before and after. Actually, let's get out of full screen for 1 second. I'll go to the beginning of this just to show you just a few other examples. So there's before, there's after. Lovely. There's before, there's after, just cleaning stuff up, before and after. It's actually the thing at the top that I didn't think it would work on, and it just worked beautifully on that. This, you know, it's like, hey, I just need to fill in that area because this is just going to be a background, or hey, I don't want that sign, or hey, I can't get any closer without falling in the water, but I don't need that right there. Or, you know, that would be really hard. A tree going up to the sky, right? Now, I'd have to do some work on the one on the left, but I got 2 of them done, you know, just like that. So, oh, gee, Julieanne, your shadows right there in the bottom corner. Good thing you're a photographer and super observant. Yeah, so anyway, and there's a movie on my, yeah, that one shows too, I guess, that's before and after, like, oh, poor little, he's so lonely. I was so happy. No, I'm so lonely. All right, it is 2:31. I am out of time. I hope you guys enjoyed that and learned something. Have a great day. Oh, hey, how you doing? Didn't see you because, of course, I can't see anybody. Huh, how's your Max going?
Not bad. It's really kind of cool.
Good.
You know, and learning a little bit more about video this time around, so this will be fun.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it would be nice. I'm glad they're recording so many of them so that I can actually watch them when I get home.
Oh, and then you'll learn stuff that you didn't know.
I always do.
Take care. We'll see you later.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.